Started back in 1928. It was started by my grandfather, who was the son of an Irish immigrant. They ended up in Chicago, and my grandfather was working in the railroad industry. And he was kind of an inventive type guy and kind of a creative guy. And he noticed that they were throwing away these devices. Actually, they were called magnet valves. And he took one home and he said, I can repair these things. And so he had approached somebody for the railroad he was working for in Chicago and said, look, if I repair these things, can I do them and will I get paid to do that? And they said, sure. Well, eventually it grew a little bit, but remember he worked out of the basement of his home, and then he stopped working for the railroads and started a company called Advanced Pyrometer. Now, that date was back in 1928. And so that was the genesis. That was the very beginning of what we do. And then after World War II, my father, who was also a William Henry, so he was William Henry II, got involved with my grandfather. And what was very cultural then is the oldest one of the family would become a part of what people were doing. And so my father then took over this very, very little business, and then he said we should probably change the name because I want to expand it. And so it was probably in the early 50s that he changed the name from Advanced Pyrometer to W.H. Leary, in honor of my grandfather, and that was also my father's name. My father also recognized that he had to go back to school because he wanted to change the complexion of the company, and so he went back to college and actually got his degree in electrical engineering and raised 6 kids at the same time, and I happened to be one of the 6 that he was raising. So that was really the genesis of how it started and how I got into it. I was in college. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Of course, all of us, kind of took turns working for Dad. But when I graduated with a teaching degree. Wasn't so sure that's what I wanted to do. And I said to my dad at that time, I said, well, let's give it a shot. And so I worked within the business, but I really didn't get a hold of what my dad was doing. He was selling primarily equipment into the railroad industry. He was selling test equipment and certifying equipment and the rest of it, but that wasn't really what I was grabbing onto. And then lo and behold, out of nowhere, I received a phone call in the early 80s from someone who said, look, we have a problem. Do you want to kind of take a look at that? And the connection in that was we started selling sensing devices for a European sensor manufacturer, and so it was allowing us to get into some different spaces. So because of that relationship, again, I received a phone call and we had lunch with somebody, and I was just intrigued. And it just so happened the person we were having lunch with ran a finishing department. Now, that was a term I wasn't familiar with, but it was a finishing department within the folding carton industry. And they had some quality assurance problems. And they had purchased 3 different systems, and they said they're not working. And because I wanted to sell sensors, because we became a distributor for this company, we said, yeah, let me see why they're not working. And one thing led to the next. Ken Sanford, who still works with the company, and Ken is actually one of our lead engineers here. Ken has probably been with Leary for 30 years now. He said, well, I'll tell you why it doesn't work. And he mentioned a whole bunch of reasons why it didn't work that were, quite frankly, were over my head, but Ken said this is why it doesn't work. So we went back to the customer at that time. It was a Chicago-based customer, a very large converter. And we said, well, the system's not going to work, and here's why. And they said, well, can you fix it? Can you make it work? And, you never really like to work on somebody else's stuff because you have to learn their stuff and then figure out a better way to do what they were doing. And we said, no, but how about if we do something? So we went back to the drawing board and we created a system that would look for certain types of quality defects. At that time, it was primarily glue placement, the twisting of a carton, and also cello detection. So we looked at those things. I wanted to sell sensors, but along with selling sensors, we had to write some code for a processor. One thing led to the next, and so we presented our solution. And quite frankly, to our amazement, it really worked, and it worked well. So we replaced the 3 systems that they had purchased from someone else, and then I said, wow, here's a problem that we're solving. If we can solve this problem for others, we might have something here. So we started going out there, and I started investigating this folding carton converting market space and realized that these machines were all over the country. So I started knocking on doors and I started peddling our solutions. And one thing led to the next. And so back in probably the early 90s, we stopped who my father was within the organization. We sold the division, or the part of the company. Division sounds bigger and grander, but we sold the part of the business that was focusing on the railroad industry to somebody who was really focusing on that. And we decided we're going to go 100% after the folding carton industry, the folding carton market. And that created the evolution for who and what we are today.
We sell equipment to the folding carton industry. So everything today comes in paperboard packaging or plastic packaging. And essentially we're on the paperboard side of things. So when you walk through a grocery store or supermarket, the aisles are lined with paperboard packaging. Everything from cereal boxes to tissue boxes to French fry boxes, fast food, frozen food, everything comes in either paper or plastic. We're that final step before the carton goes to our customer's customer. So large brand owners like Anheuser-Busch, InBev, Miller Coors, Procter & Gamble, Kimberly-Clark, these customers are buying paperboard packaging from our customers. They're automatically filling this packaging with machinery, so there's not much, if any, human element involved in the filling of the packaging. So what we do is we ensure when these large brand owners receive packaging that it's 100% fit for use. Specifically, what we are is we apply the glue inline at very high speeds on folder gluers. We provide inspection of that glue. We read barcodes. We read for print verification, window patches on like a spaghetti box. There are dozens and dozens of other solutions. So essentially, we're that last stop in a factory before the product goes to our customer's customer to make sure that it's 100% fit for use and the quality is perfect. Our system is comprised of a few different elements. Really, the heart of the system is a control box, a controller, which essentially is an industrial PC, an industrial computer that has a power supply, processor, and other circuit boards. So that's kind of the brains of the system, all operated by a touch screen that houses our operating software, which is really, as we describe, kind of our secret sauce. We refer to that as Monet. So that kind of controls everything on the machine. But then, with respect to the glue application, we also provide pumping systems, fluid regulation systems that are controlling the amount of glue that's applied or dispensed from the cold glue nozzle. Immediately after the cold glue nozzle, there are inspection sensors or cameras that look for the placement of that adhesive to see if it's in the right place in the target area. If there's too much or too little adhesive, our system will identify that, track that, and eject that. We also provide barcode readers, as mentioned, skew detection, window film detection, doubles detection. There are literally dozens of quality inspection options that we provide. If we see any carton defect on the machine, as we get down to the end of the machine, which is called the trombone section, we make automatic rejection devices that will remove a single defect at speeds of up to 60 miles per hour or 700 meters per minute, depending upon the size of the piece. So we automate the inspection and the rejection of each carton at very, very high speeds.